Hi, and welcome to another episode of pianoTV. So I'm very excited because we finally get to start rolling out the Christmas music now that it is December. Christmas is one of my favorite times of the year for teaching. I love Christmas music. Somehow, over the 10 years I've been teaching, I've not gotten sick of Jingle Bells. That's not wood. I should knock on wood just so this isn't the year I get sick of Jingle Bells. So today we are going to look at two different versions of the popular Christmas song Away in a Manger. So I made two versions. One of them I would like to call the simple version because it's written just as the treble clef and chords. So it's like, it leaves a lot blank. So if you like doing creative arrangements and stuff, you can invent your own left hand. And the second version is more of like the full classic, not classic piano, but like the full version with the treble clef and the bass clef. It's a little bit harder to play because there's just more to it. There's some right hand voicing. Anyway, the reason I wanted to do two instead of just like one sheet is because we all have different learning styles and playing styles. Some of us would rather just look at a melody line and figure out the chords and just kind of wing something, do a little bit of improvisation. Whereas others of us prefer to just like play exactly what's on a sheet. So I wanted to leave a little bit of wiggle room so you have both options, and they are linked in the description bar below if you want to check them out. But let's look at that sheet music. So let's take a look at the simple version first. As you can see, the only notes you have to read are in the right hand. And if you're familiar with the tune of Away in a Manger, this shouldn't be too big of a challenge. So above the right hand, you have just these chord symbols here. So there's three different types of chords in the song. There's majors, minors, and then there's sevenths too. So if you missed the last video on chords, definitely check it out if you're not quite sure how to figure these chords out. So just a little note on how to read these. If it's just a basic letter name like F or B flat, that means it is just a regular major chord. If you see something like this, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a seventh chord, not a major seventh, because then it would be C maj 7. So C7 is just a seventh chord, and then a little bit further along here, you have these chords with the lowercase m, and that's indicating a minor chord. So that's how to read them from the chord symbols. So you have a lot of options when you're playing this arrangement of Away in a Manger. So you can play the right hand notes. Hey, you can play the right hand notes even just by themselves. Or you could play the chords, maybe one chord every bar, just solid style, nice and simple, like this. And that absolutely gets the point across, and it does sound nice. Another variation you could do instead of just playing a solid chord is you could play a broken chord on quarter beats. Like that. And let's hear what that sounds like all together. That's really pretty, and it suits the kind of the slow rocking sound of the tune to do just a simple rocking chord pattern. Another option is to play full arpeggios. So an arpeggio is basically just a chord, like F chord, here we go, and then landing with that root note. So you basically go like a full octave. So that would be an arpeggiated chord pattern, and B flat and F. So this is the kind of chord pattern that I'll show you in the second more complicated specific arrangement of this, but I'll just show you a little bit now so you can see it. I'm going to change the meter of it a little bit too. And you can see that kind of arpeggiated pattern works really, really well with this slow rocking motion. And the only difference between the broken chord pattern I did, these were played as quarter notes. So you have 3 per bar, whereas I played these as eighth notes. So there's just twice as many of them in a bar. And yeah, that's really the only difference. You can also fiddle around with adding harmony notes in the right hand. So instead of just this single note, you could maybe add thirds or sixths. So we talked about that in the video a while ago about how to harmonize a melody, which I'll link to on the screen. But thirds and sixths are usually the safest choices for melody harmony just because they almost always sound good. So for example, you could play the right hand something like this, built in mostly thirds. Just something like that. It's really, really simple to play, but it just adds a little something, even if you're just doing basic chords. just adds a little more depth and texture to it. So one point to remember is when you're harmonizing a melody, it's usually a good idea to add the harmony note underneath the melody. So our melody is C, C, B flat, A. So I don't know why I decided to sing that. So your harmony should always fall under it, or else it's just going to make the melody note a little more difficult to hear. So in general, I think it's a good idea to start by learning the piece with just the basic solid chords to get a feel for the tune. And then once you're there, you can start upping the ante as you get comfortable with it. Now let's take a look at the full version of the song. So we still have the chord names written up top, but the bass clef is all filled out with an accompaniment, and the right hand is there too, just like it was before, but there's just some extra harmony notes filled in there. So let's take a look at this left hand pattern. It's written in a broken arpeggiated pattern. So if you're playing an F chord, basically all this is going to be are the 3 notes of an F chord and then followed by the F on top of the octave. And almost all of these chords with like a couple little small tweaks and exceptions are going to follow this pattern. So it's pretty simple to follow along. The right hand harmony is almost entirely comprised of thirds with a few exceptions, like say right here. And I just want to explain the reason for that really quickly, just for a little bit of a harmony background. So this is a situation where the sound of a third wouldn't be appropriate. So right here, I have the harmony as a second, or C and B flat. So if it was a third, I would be playing a C and an A there instead. And with our G minor chord, G, B flat, D, the sound of an A is really clashy, and it's just not welcome at that party. So a C and a B flat sounds a lot more nice and harmonious with that chord. So you can hear this arpeggiated left hand pattern throughout the piece. It's really quite easy to improvise this pattern just using the chord symbols above, but I wanted a written out version because sometimes it helps to visualize how to put it all together. So one thing to be mindful of when you're playing this arrangement is to keep the right hand especially as legato as possible, even though you're going to be using the pedal, because what can sometimes happen is a sort of like staccato playing, and while you're using the pedal to cover up the gaps in the sound. But you'll find it sounds a lot nicer and much less hollow when all the notes are played legato from the get-go. Like when you're playing this, it should sound nice and smooth without the pedal. The pedal shouldn't be like a band-aid for improper playing. It should just kind of like add to the effect. So really make sure you're not playing too staccato, that you're keeping things nice and legato in your right hand without using the pedal as a crutch. And the same thing in the left hand, although it's a lot easier to play the left hand legato, I find. So it should sound nice and smooth even before you add the pedal. The pedal should just add like kind of like a soft blur, not, again, you don't want to use the pedal to fill in your mistakes. All right, so now it's your turn. I hope you enjoy these arrangements of Away in A Manger, and that you find something to do in there, and maybe you can learn a few new chords along the way too. To keep up to date, you can subscribe to this channel and check out pianotv.net, and we're definitely going to do some more Christmas songs before Christmas hits, so be prepared for an onslaught of Christmas videos. I made that sound like a bad thing. It's a good thing.